Here's another one from the collection of essays by John McPhee, Tabula Rasa. This is a piece called Ray Brock. What do you have to be carried away by bullfighting and by Ernest Hemingway's descriptions of it? Immature comes to mind. I was immature for more time than most people, and I spent the entire summer after graduating from college, after studying Middle English and Italian Renaissance painting and the Elizabethan worldview, reading just about every book in English on the subject known in Spain as El Ruedo. Some of those books were better written than Hemingway's, but there was only one, Death in the Afternoon. Then, in early autumn, I went off to the University of Cambridge, read Shakespeare and nothing but Shakespeare through the Michaelmas and Lent terms, bought an army jeep left over from the Second World War, flew with it across the Channel in a cargo plane, and went to Spain with American friends. Our first destination was, it's almost needless to say, the 9-day Fiesta de San Fermin at Pamplona in Navarra, where bulls of the day spent their last morning running through the streets, fireworks filled the sky at night, and Ernest Hemingway's novel, The Sun Also Rises, disdained in all Spain by the fascist regime, was set. For his participation in support of the losing side in the Spanish Civil War, Hemingway himself was persona non grata in the country. If Generalissimo Franco had been an Ayatollah, there would have been a fatwa. I had with me a copy of Fiesta, an Argentine translation of The Sun Also Rises, my notion being that if you read in a language you were learning, a book with which you were particularly familiar in your own language, the result should be marked improvement. I had plenty of room for that. We found a place to stay on a farm some miles from town and missed a lot of running bulls after getting back there at 2 a.m. Afternoons, every afternoon, we took in the whole card from the first spin of a cape to the last kill. We could afford sol, sometimes sol y sombra, never better. Looking around, we saw many faces that did not look Spanish. A lot, plainly, were American college kids, American male college kids. In fact, we recognized quite a few of them, and a particular moment has never faded in my mind's eye. One of these students, 2 years behind me at Princeton, whom I had known at home but not well, happened to be sitting near us, and after a dying bull hemorrhaged through its nostrils, I saw that the kid was weeping. We did not see him again there. 3 or 4 years later, he was training as a Navy pilot, flying a jet fighter off a carrier. He missed a landing, and the plane, right side up, went onto the water. He tried to open the canopy and get out, but the canopy was stuck shut and wouldn't budge. The plane filled with water. Sailors who observed it go down said the pilot looked up at them, raised his hands past his head in the spreading gesture of helplessness, and shrugged. In crowded barrooms, crowded cafes, we drank red wine that, like sangria, was set on the table in pitchers. If the person next to you shouted loudly enough, you could sometimes hear what was said. We hunted for scenes of relative quiet, and one night in a room with well-spaced round tables, we sat opposite a man and a woman who seemed interested in who we might be and where from and what, if anything, went on in our minds. If they were interested in us, the reverse was even more true, because they looked exactly like every picture we had ever seen of Mary Welsh Hemingway and Ernest Hemingway. They did not introduce themselves. If you had seen a Look magazine cover, a Time cover, a Life cover, there it was across the table. Her blondness, his white beard, her compactness, his heft, her smile and his. Their photogenic faces. Could it be? Since 1923, he had been here many times. Why not this time? If he could drive to Paris while bullets were still flying, why not Pamplona while bulls were still running? This for him was a magnetic town, a place to beat the odds he was always beating. Of course, the man and woman at the barroom table could be fakes, impersonators, but this was early for that. By 2010, there were 400,000 Elvis Presleys extant, some of them women, and it was not unknown for passengers on airplanes to find themselves sitting next to Chairman Mao, especially in China, where at least one Mao Zedong was a woman. Finally, I asked the white-bearded papa across the table point blank to tell us his name. He said, Ray Brock. Ray Brock? The foreign correspondent? International News Service? United Press? New York Times? Profiler of dictators and diplomats in North Africa, Turkey, Pakistan, Israel, Iran, and elsewhere? Author of Blood, Oil, and Sand, which the review and commentary said was full of the globe-trotting journalist's standard mixture of frenetic prose, pointless anecdote, name-dropping, innuendo, aimless detail? Who was impersonating whom? I had never heard of Ray Brock. I would look all that up later, but no one named Ray Brock could be the author of the book in my travel bag and also the alter ego of the protagonist preparing to fish in Navarrese River. Digging at the edge of the damp ground, I filled 2 empty tobacco tins with worms and sifted dirt onto them. The goats watched me dig. And then Jake Barnes and Bill Gorton start off on foot from a country inn. As they walk across a meadow and through rising woods and across high open fields and down to a stream, each successive sentence in stair-step form contains something of its predecessor and something new. Repeating, advancing, like fracture zones on the bed of the ocean. It is not ineffective. It is lyrical. In future years, I would assign the passage to writing students, asking if they could see a way to shorten it without damaging the repetition. Ray Brock died of a heart attack in 1968 in Orangeburg, New York. That he and Hemingway knew each other is indisputable. In a Hemingway collection in the Kennedy Library in Boston, for example, there are 3 letters from Brock to Hemingway with notations on them in Hemingway's handwriting. Brock was only 54 when he died. So if he was the white-bearded papa at the table in Pamplona, he was 40 at the time. His Blood, Oil, and Sand had been published 2 years before. In a photograph on its dust jacket, he is interviewing a Turkish minister and the American ambassador in Ankara. His beard is blacker than a diplomat's shoe.